because of this young black man, Caldwell Noir. Have you heard of him?
Yeah.
Oh man, he is amazing. He's bringing in. He is like the whole makeup has changed. Like Lisa was saying, she's African American sister that's married to a brother here, and she said whenever she used to go to the NRA show, she felt like she was like in a country club. But like this year, she went and there's all these different minorities. Everybody's coming together. Everybody's coming together for freedom, sovereignty, for Second Amendment rights, for the Constitution. It's like beyond race, beyond creed, beyond ethnicity. It's just transcending all of it. And it was great to see everybody down there in Dallas, Texas, and just had a great time down there. We missed you, man. We missed you.
Yeah, well, I've been busy here too, but I understand it's a great event, and what you're bringing up is good to hear, because that's what we need to do. I think as patriots, expand our beliefs. Let people start to understand exactly why we believe the way we believe and why it is good. And when you start seeing people from the inner city starting to get on board,
oh yeah,
and different minorities and groups, all kinds of groups, young, old, men, women, all kinds of nationalities, then you know that we're onto something, and people are starting to understand a little bit more that perhaps you have to rely on yourself to protect your property, protect your family. You can't always rely on outside forces. So that is really good news. I didn't realize that, and certainly you do not see that. I certainly haven't seen it on mainstream media. That's for sure. If that's what we want to call it, mainstream media.
Oh, you mean yes? The fake stream media didn't cover any of it. And what's amazing is that the demographics also for the NRA show. Lisa was saying that there's a lot more young people. I mean, we bumped into a whole bunch of young YouTube stars that are in the gun community, etc. And they're out there and they're meeting their friends and they're doing meet and greets. And there's all these young people there that are getting excited about the Bill of Rights, Constitution, and of course the Second Amendment, which defends what you're really have always been at the forefront of, which is the First Amendment and independent journalism, etc. Lou is, of course, the head of the Independent Gazette. He is, of course, also the chair of the Libertarian Party. I mean, just his list goes on and on and on. But Lou, let me tell us what you've been working on in the most recent days. Am I cutting in?
Well,
okay, there you go.
Well, there's quite a few things. One of the things that I realized when we were doing the Independent Gazette is the retribution from that has been huge. Certainly, from advertisers, people are afraid sometimes to advertise. So you almost got to weigh, and you got to figure out how do you keep something going at the same time still doing true independent media. Well, one of the things that I have done is we're under Buffalo Head Media. We've expanded in a number of different ways. We have magazines now that we mail out to our communities, but it's hitting in different ways, Pastor. In other words, it's not. We have a visitor magazine that gets certain views out, but it's more uplifting. We write about what we find is good in Northeast Pennsylvania. We have a seeker magazine, which is more holistic and organic. Certainly, I just brought on the first intern to do investigative journalist out of Keystone College, and looking to expand even more into the independent media. I did bring up the fact that the Bertelsmann Foundation, which is the largest nonprofit in Germany, was hired by the European Parliament. We talked about this before, but it was a little over a year ago, last Christmas, that they came and interviewed me. They had picked me out of a group of people that does independent media, and they just did their book, and the film just came out. Just this last month or so, and so I'm kind of it was uplifting, so to speak, and I'm going to kind of piggyback off of that, because I do want to do a documentary on free and independent media and free and equal elections, both of which I think is what's sorely needed in this country, and we really don't have. We still don't have. And so that's where I'm at now. I think my life mission at this point is that I'm looking more into the independent media, and certainly trying to bring out what is happening with our elections locally here. I'm doing a write-in campaign. I will be running as an independent again here for state representative.
Wow.
But in Northeast, not only just Northeast Pennsylvania, but Pennsylvania as a whole, over 50% of our state representatives run unopposed. What's even worse than that, we have career politicians, and one of the people I'm running against is a 6-term state legislator, and not only has she been in the legislature for 12 years, but she's there as a Republican, but now actively recruiting Democrats to write her name in so that there is no competition, as she did last year. And this is what happens. I mean, we have career politicians that circumvent the political process just so that they have no competition. And I say, we don't, if you have no competition, there's no freedom. We lose everything that supposedly we stand for. And one of the reasons, one of the reasons I'm doing a write-in campaign, only for the fact of maybe keeping her off the ballot as a Democrat. And this way I could go up against her one-on-one. Unfortunately, here in Pennsylvania, we have those straight party vote tickets that people could just go in, they hit the button, and that's what they do. So it's very, very difficult to run against somebody that's on the ballot as both a Democrat and Republican. And quite honestly, I think it's it's shameful. It really is shameful, and that we have to do that. But so that's what I've been up with, and my life work as we move forward is I think is this free and independent media that I think is
it's so critical. I mean, like you say, it's so critical because we know, of course, you've been at the forefront of independent media, working with James O'Keefe, Project Veritas. I mean, some of the most trusted investigative journalism in the world now. I mean, really making breakthroughs at CNN, fake stream media, MSNBC, you name it, George Soros funded organizations, you name it, that are in the propaganda game. They become a propaganda wing of the Democratic Party. It's a completely leftist organization. Not even have the, they don't even have the kudos to be called liberals because they're complete leftists. They're Marxist, socialist, communists. And it's amazing because if the free and independent press was doing its job, it would be able to show, balance points, which be able to show both sides of the coin, which they proclaim that they do. But of course, we always see as just negative things about Trump, negative things about anything that's sovereignty or freedom based. We're going to be on A&E. There's a show called Cults and Extreme Beliefs, and they're exploring they're investigating different religious groups, and we're the extreme group because we believe in Second Amendment rights, and the founding fathers are not extremists in our view, but to the left, the founding fathers are extremists. They even put that in the Army manuals, Lou. This is how insane the left is. They're so blatantly totalitarian.
Well, you're not going to get any argument from me on this point, and it's sad once again where we have gotten to, and it's critical to have independent media, and quite honestly, Pastor, one of the things that I do talk about is it's difficult to give people a voice that you do not fundamentally agree with. I feel as though I have the capacity to do that. You see, I tell people I don't care what you think, but what I want to know is your views, why you view the way you do, and let's get the information out and let people make up their own mind based on correct information, not false information. Because if we're fed false information, people are making judgments, unfortunately, on information and that is just not correct. Unfortunately, our politics have become totally tribal. You're either on one side or the other. And I like to think that I continue and I will continue to search for the truth, regardless of where that might take me. And sometimes we find things out that are not what we want to hear. One of the things that we had talked about, and one of the investigations that we had done about Syria and what's going on over there, and it's something that you had brought up before. The largest Christian Syrian community in the United States is in Allentown, Pennsylvania. At that time, I went down and interviewed people that were supposedly being gassed, and they're telling me, no, if it wasn't for Assad, the Coptic Christians would be dead. I find out that the largest Christmas celebration in the Middle East is Damascus, and you just kind of wonder why. It's very, very difficult. And then I hear from the other side, and people say, no, it's Assad that's gassing people. So how do you weigh, and how do we find the truth when we look at media, and we look at or certainly mainstream media that all have a certain agenda, that they'll close their eyes, they'll put on blinders just to get their agenda across, and it's tough. People like ourselves and just regular patriots out there, people that are just ordinary citizens that don't have the time to dig into things as much as we do. How do they get the correct information, to talk about what's going on, and how do you make correct judgments? I'm not over in Syria. All I know is I could talk to people that are there, and families that are there, and go out of the way to try to find the truth. But you would think that we as not only as a people, but as a country, in our own country, would want to make sure that we're getting the correct information.
Well, we just showed a clip a couple of days ago from OAN, a One America Network, that sent some reporters to Duma. What was that city's name? Duma, right? Duma? Was it Duma? Duma. And that was the one that purportedly was hit by the chemical attacks, where the white helmets that won an Oscar and an Emmy from the Hollywood weirdo elites. And of course is a propaganda wing for ISIS. They've been caught doing propaganda work for ISIS, staging these chemical attacks. ISIS has been caught, and it's reported by the New York Times 52 times that ISIS has been staging chemical attacks. And we have them down there. The OAN was down there in Duma, Syria, interviewing people at the purported site of the chemical explosion. And they said nothing of the sort happened. It was just, business as usual. People were just walking around town, doing their thing. And we're just living our life out here. And of course, as you just said, they all say Assad is actually supporting Christians. He's fighting ISIS. And of course, when we, under Hillary Clinton, Obama, and Bush, and all those neocon, globalist CIA takeover group funded by George Soros folks, that we were basically, the U.S. military was being used as the Air Force, the protectors of the most radical jihadis funded by Saudi Arabia. ISIS, Al Qaeda, IS, you name it, whatever name they put on them. We were defending them. We were protecting them. And just a few weeks ago, we saw President Trump go in there and hit, some of the bases, allowing ISIS to have another flourishing wave that they're now fighting back on. And Assad was beating them down. Russia was almost victorious with ISIS, so they were going to pull out. U.S. was going to pull out. But then they sucked us back in. And now we're in a larger Syrian mess. Now Israel's shooting missiles at Syria. Now there may be a huge Iran war with Israel. Do we want another war in the Middle East that will suck us in interminably? Endless wars where our kids just die?
Yeah, we're cutting in and out again a little bit, but I think as most of your listeners probably already know, is that Assad is actually Alawite, which is a sect that was Christian, but was forced to become Muslim because they refused to pay the taxes. And so there's liberal, a lot more so to trendy. This than meets the eye. And once again, it's so important that we have people that we could actually trust to give us, because you have to almost form a trust somewhere along the way and say, these people don't have an agenda. All there is, or what they're looking for, is the truth. And even if you report on things that necessarily might not go to your basic philosophy sometimes, at least over a period of time, you could say at least these organizations are you could trust them to tell you what is really happening and not twist stuff to get an agenda across, which is what most media does. I mean, no matter what they do, I know how they could cut videos. We see that, even at like some of the rallies at the beginning, there's not that many people there at the Trump rallies, and then you look at the whole thing, and it's a sad situation. But all we can do is continue to fight, and I think we're on the right course here, Pastor. I really do.
Well, it's interesting because you're talking about this kind of self-reflexivity, the ability to be able to, critique yourself, be able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, I'm not a perfect person. And I think this is really emblematic of Christian civilization, because the fundamental core of Christian tenet of belief is that the corruptibility of man, is that we are sinners, but through God's grace and God's love, we are saved by grace and through the blood of Christ. So this idea of the corruptibility of man is so critical, because look at the left. Look at the ideologies they believe. They believe literally that if you're an enlightened being, an illuminated one, that you can be a perfect being, which then can rule over this world with centralized power. It never happens well. It never turns out good. That's why we have checks and balances in our system, because of the Christian foundation is the corruptibility of man, and we have to trust in God, not in centralized power.
There you go. And once again, there is no argument from this, from this individual on what you just said, because that is so true. And it's man is weak, and one of the reasons why our founders totally believed in a limited government, because once that government becomes omnipotent and overruling on everything that we do, everywhere we look, there's new laws, there's new licensing, there's it's out of control, and truly a limited government. One of the things that I have talked about prior is our courts and having cameras in courtrooms, and we're all being surveilled.
That's a great idea.
And I happen to bring up the fact all the time. I don't care who you are. You'll eat your ham and cheese sandwich differently when you know that you have a camera on you. You're not,
Absolutely.
So I mean, why not? I mean, where we're supposed to
cameras in congressmen and senators' rooms. How about that, in their offices? Cameras in their offices. We can check on them, while they're in their work hours. Yes.
I mean, absolutely. Because we are ordinary citizens, and no matter where you go, we're being watched, and it's a society that we live in, and yet those that are in power have put themselves in a position to where they hide behind the black robes, they hide behind we have to protect the children, they hide behind we have to make sure justice is served. And yet what happens is we have precedents right here in Northeast Pennsylvania, and certainly around the country, that we can't trust what's going on.
Well, they say protect the children, but it was Lou Jazikoff and your investigative journalist team that broke the pay-for-play scandals out here, where the judges were selling the kids. Tell us about that real quick.
Well, and this custody for cash, which we were really on for 5 years, and I'm here to tell you that it will dwarf Kids for Cash, what's going on, because the first time we wrote the story on custody for cash, and this has to do with taking children and placing them in private homes, and the huge amount of money that's coming from the federal government as a reward to do this. Is now finally coming to light. Just recently, 2 state senators have launched, within the last month, have now launched an investigation into the children and youth and the stuff that's going on, because they say after 5 years, after we have pounded the ground for 5 years saying there's something terribly wrong, they have now come out and said something is terribly wrong. And all I could say, without getting down into the weeds, because we could do a whole show on this by itself. But I got to tell you, it is heartbreaking. And, I've been thrown out of courts on a weekly basis just for showing up, just for sitting in the courtroom saying you can't be in here, you can't be trusted. And the last time, and you know that this just gets me going here. The last time, because I've been asked, just recently, just 2 days ago, I was asked to go to court again, and I said no, I will not go to court with anybody to follow anything, because every single person that we went to, their children were taken away from them. And the last time it happened, and we're on record for that, and I could show you pictures, they used the Independent Gazette as evidence to take their children away from their family permanently, because they spoke with us. They spoke with a radical newspaper. That's what and it was introduced in court as evidence.
You're an extremist, Lou. You believe in the free media and free press and independent journalism. You're an extremist. You don't believe in ISIS and radical Islam. You don't want to cut women's genitals off and sell them to sex slavery. You're a total extremist. You're a bigot, white supremacist.
Yes. And that's exactly, and what's sad is that, once again, this is behind closed doors. You're not allowed to see what's going on. There's no cameras there. There's no black box that somebody could go back. You see, here's the problem with this. And I'd love to talk to, court administrators and DAs and all this other stuff, because, what you first hear is that, well, we have to protect people. We have to protect justice. We have courts here. You're not allowed to walk in with your cell phone. I mean, my thing is this is the one place you could have a recording. What I just told you about what happened in court, somebody could say, no, that didn't happen, because there's no recording. You think about this. No matter what we do, we have recordings. Why is there not a black box? Okay, if you want to protect children, if you want to use that as an excuse, we should have a record to be able to go back in and say, not somebody sitting on it, writing down the transcript. We're still using stuff that we used back in the early 1900s. Somebody sitting there writing down the transcript. Why is there not, tape recordings and video recordings?
Oh, we haven't technologically progressed since 1776. I mean, this is unbelievable. I mean, the NSA is spying on you and recording every single phone call that you make as a private citizen. I mean, illegally, by the way. And you can't even go to a public courtroom and record the proceedings. What the hell is that?
Yes. What is that? What is that supposed to? You think about that.
That's freaking North Korea.
And if we get nothing else out of this, I just want people to start thinking, wait a minute, there's something fundamentally wrong with this stuff. Where justice is supposed to be administered. They built these big courthouses at the beginning of the set. That's where the people would go, and watch how justice was administered. You could go in and see how, in your communities where, things were happening. Now you go through, they pad you down, they check you out. If you have anything on you, they take it away from you. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I'm running. Whether win, lose, or draw, it gives you a platform to talk about certain issues that, unfortunately, these career politicians will not talk about, because it's not in their agenda.
Well, if you run on the platform and putting cameras in all the congressmen and senators' office buildings and office rooms, so we can see what kind of meetings they're doing. Hey, I'd be popular. That people would love that. It's hey, this is an internet age. We want to see what they're doing.
Well, it's one of that's one of the 5 platforms that I'm actually running on is transparency in courtrooms. Of course, term limits. I think salaries should be commensurate to what people in the community make. I mean, right now, as a state representative, they're pulling down about $90,000. They get paid $185 a day to drive to work. They have the best health care plans. They have pensions. And then meanwhile, people in our communities here in Wyoming County, they're bringing home about $40,000 a year, and our public servants are no more than pigs at a trough, quite honestly. And, I don't want to go negative and I won't say that, but at the end of the day, I mean, we have to look at these things and say, what can we do as citizens? Why? I mean, what is a public servant? What are they supposed to be? I mean, I brought up, New Hampshire, they make $100. It's part-time. They go there, they go do what they have to do, and they come back in their community and they go to work, and they don't use the politics as their career. And that's a message that I'm going to be beating for the next 4 or 5 months, and hopefully it catches on. I think the time has come that people are starting to look at this and saying, "Wait a minute, we have to do something different because it's not serving the public good the way we've been doing it."
I mean, people are fed up. Look at the whole Trump wave and the
Sorry
Trump revolution
to carry on so much.
that began.
Talking.
No, but look, people are fed up. Look at how President Trump, galloped his way into the White House. Because people are fed up. They're fed up being lied to by the media. They're fed up being lied to by the politicians. They're fed up by being controlled and being spied on by Hillary Clinton and Obama and the White House and the FBI and the CIA. They're sick and tired of all these black ops, organizations, this deep state that continues to sell our country over to the foreign nationals and to George Soros. And it's unbelievable. And people start seeing the system. People are starting to see how corrupt the system is. As you said, getting President Trump in there was only the first step. I mean, there's still a major fight ahead of us. There's still major, minor battles all the way from the local to the state that we got to win.
Yeah, we cut in and out again here for a minute, but yes, there is a lot of battles. But I think this last election showed that there is hope in the sense that you speak to the truth and you talk plainly. You let people know exactly where you're standing. That maybe we're breaking this dynamic of this two-party duopoly where everything is controlled, where the parties actually control what you're doing, as opposed to you being an individual and representing not only your views but the views of your constituency. And from your beliefs. I mean, I think unfortunately, the two-party system has controlled too many politicians, and the money has controlled what's going on also.
Well, speaking of politicians, we got the gubernatorial Pennsylvania race coming up soon. That is this Tuesday, upcoming Tuesday. And we have in terms of the Republican side, we have Wagner and Mango. Mango was on the show while he was running a couple months ago, and he said he got a lot of flack for that. But he said, I stand with my constituents and I stand for conservative values. He's pro-life, he's pro-gun. I talked to Congressman Metcalf, who was the Second Amendment congressman down there in Harrisburg, who organizes the yearly Second Amendment rally, which we attended. Justin gave an awesome speech down there about the Second Amendment before we headed off to the NRA show. And Metcalf said, Mango is definitely stronger on the Second Amendment because Wagner is supporting the transgender bill. He's supporting like these different LGBT bills. He's supporting, did he say he was supporting some pro-choice, basically pro-abortion stuff? I can't remember if that was part of it, but he said, yeah, this guy is definitely a wolf in sheep clothing. And Mango seems to be the better man. What do you think about this whole gubernatorial race coming up and Wolf and all that?
Well, being, I guess, a little sarcastic in one sense, if I was able to vote, once again, I'm a registered independent, so I'm not allowed to vote in this upcoming primary. I'm allowed to help pay for it, but
you're one of them with the Black Plague. Oh, okay, right. I see. You're one of them with the Black Plague.
Right. I'm not part of the club. I'm not part of the Moose and the Elks Club being allowed to vote.
You're one of them with
I would vote for Mango. Yes, from what I've seen and what I've heard, what's coming down, and certainly listening to folks like you. You rely on information that you receive from people that you trust, and I would be voting for Mango if I was allowed to participate in this. No taxation without representation is not alive and well in Pennsylvania once again. And these are one of the things that we need to change. I don't understand why. And as the independents continue to grow, and as a number of people that are switching from Republican or Democrat, as an independent, as this contingent grows, we got to question why, why are independents paying for the Democrats and Republicans to pick their candidates? They don't pay to pick independent candidates. That's for sure.
Well, this was such an important issue because look, before President Trump came in and started revamping and retaking the Republican Party, it was basically the Democratic Party. I mean, the neocons are Democrats. They're receiving money from George Soros. They're voting for Obamacare. They're protecting Obamacare. You know what I mean? They're just giving the talking points of traditional sort of conservative values. But they're growing big government. They're expanding the deep state. They're, funding the secret government, shadow government, which now is trying to, get rid of Trump. I mean, this is ridiculous. We had one party funded by the the largest criminal banking cartel, George Soros, Rothschilds, you name it. They basically have taken over this country after the Federal Reserve Act came in and we got taken over by a private bank.
Well, once again, there's absolutely no argument there, and it's we have a lot of work to move forward on, that's for sure. But if we don't have, and it always comes back to this. I mean, if you can't have free elections, if we can't, we have men and women fighting all over the world, unfortunately, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, so that they could have free elections over there. When you think about what's going on right here in our own backyards, and if we go back to that tribal politics again, people have a tendency to just close their eyes. If they're Republicans, as long as it's helping the Republicans, well, we could close our eyes to it. If they're Democrats and it helps the Democrat Party, we'll close our eyes to it. And at the end of the day, that's not American. I just had this conversation the other day. I don't care what you call me. You want to call me a Democrat, call me a Republican, call me libertarian, call me an independent. But at the end, I'm an American citizen. Call me that. I would like to be known as somebody
You're a child of God. Woo!
You can give me any label you want, because just like you said before. I mean, look at these labels that we put on people, and people right away say, "Oh, we thought you were conservative," and then you look at what conservative values are and say, "Well, wait a minute, that's not what I classified as a conservative. But certainly not growing up, and you're supposed to conserve your resources."
Exactly.
Conserve.
Yes, the conservatives are so conservative on finances that they just keep spending us into death.
Exactly. Let's
Can I have some more credit cards I can spend on? Oh, Lord mercy.
And I know this touches on something that you're concerned with. But when we even look at how debt is created, I mean, we know that, or most people say, well, if you spend too much, you have debt created. But how does the Federal Reserve play into this? You ask anybody, 99% of the people, you ask what the Federal Reserve is. And first of all, if they even know, they say, well, yeah, it's part of the federal government. And how does that help create debt? I mean, and so we have a lot of work to do, but at the end of the day, it's people like ourselves that are still out there that are trying to educate folks on different things. And for myself, Pastor, a little bit, sometimes I like to use the humor. Sometimes I'd like to say, hey, wait a minute. What's going on? Even like with this run here and getting back. Do you remember when Trump called Putin and congratulated Putin, and all, especially on the left? Oh, it's a rigged election. The guy, he didn't have any real opponents. And now I say, wait a minute. I said, we have right here in Pennsylvania, Northeast Pennsylvania, we don't even make an illusion that there's anybody running on it, or if it's a rigged election. We only have candidates that are the only ones on the ballot. So, I mean, these are the things that we talk about and try to bring up. I mean, how do you have a democracy when you only hear from one voice? I mean, think about that. The person I'm running against, and this is going on with both things. Over 50% of our state legislators run unopposed. Why is that?
Wow, that's shocking, isn't it? Isn't that shocking?
Over 50%, and that only run unopposed. Then they seek the to get on the ballot line as a Are you a Democrat or a Republican?
You know,
I mean,
it's interesting.
Think about this.
Man, I mean, who was it that said, was it Socrates? I can't remember who was this. Plato. I think it was Plato that says, he said that you may not be interested in politics, but politics will always be interested in you.
and you must hear that a lot too sometimes, because I hear that all the time, that, I can't stand politics. I can't. And I always bring up the fact that it affects everything that we do. The
yes.
laws and regulations that whatnot. I mean, just being a little snarky again, you would think after all these years, I love politicians. Oh, we introduced another 350 bills this session.
Oh,
how long is it going to take to get it right? Can you imagine? If after 250 years you still have to introduce bills to get things right? I mean,
how about every year we have 10% of the laws have to disappear?
Maybe I'll put that on my platform.
And
maybe that's it.
So every 10 years, all the laws will be revoked.
I'll introduce is to get rid of the bills.
Every year, 10% of existing laws must disappear. They'll be erased. They'll vanish.
Well, if I put that on my platform, I'll let you know.
I'm voting for King Louis the First.
The first bill I'll introduce is that no more new bills until we get rid of 10.
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
That's not a bad thing. I kind of like that idea. I think I might steal it.
That's an important idea. Well, look, President Trump did that, right? He came in and he said, every bill we sign in, we're going to get rid of 2. Right? Every regulation. Yeah, every new regulation.
That would be, yeah.
But I mean, the president has been...
How about reading the bills? I think How about we even read the bills?
Oh, my gosh. I mean, talk about the bills. Look at this omnibus bill that he signed. And, of course, they're saying he did it, because he wanted to put $700 billion into the military. And it was a $1.7 trillion... $1.3 trillion bill. I mean... this is huge money. I mean, it took us 200 years to get to $1 trillion of debt. He's signing $1.3 trillion more in debt.
Yeah.
And they're only allocating $2 billion to the wall. And Chucky Schumer got how many? He got $80 billion for his project under the tunnel bridge he's building. Yeah. This is ridiculous. Democrats got 80% of what they wanted in this crazy omnibus bill.
Oh, boy, I got to tell you, I know our time is coming up here, but, I'd almost like to pick your brain a little bit. You probably have a little bit more information than I do on this. On the surface, it seems like a great idea, but what do you think about the this meeting with North Korea and Singapore coming up? What is your take on this?
Well, our take is that we're very, President Trump is trying his best to try to make peace and obviously not set off a thermonuclear war, and he has a strong position, and it's working in terms of them meeting. But again, the North Korean leadership has always lied. They've always said, "Oh, we're going to denuclearize. We'll meet." They can talk about it all day long, 2 ways till Sunday. They'll talk about just yes, we'll do it, whatever we want. Just give us some money. Just give us, be scared of us. It's crazy because right now we have in South Korea, they have the most communist leftist president that the nation has ever had. I mean, this guy is a total communist. Okay, the key members of his his staff, his cabinet, all former Marxists. Okay, that were radicals during college. So you have the most communist president in the history of Korea, literally. Now shaking hands with Kim Jong-un and saying, "Oh, we're brothers now, and we love to hang out and we want to make peace here." But the problem is they're making peace in terms of centered on communism. They're making peace in terms of a totalitarian peace. He's basically the South Korean president is becoming like the little footboy, the little servant of the dictator in the North. And so, of course, Kim Jong-un loves this. And, of course, the North loves this because now it's being united. The Korean peninsula is being united, but based on Chinese communism and the dictatorship model there. And, of course, some alternative media is saying with President Trump that they're having a 10-year plan with the North and South to reunify, and they're going to give him like $10 billion a year or whatever. But the reality is, if they unify centered on communism and centered on leftist ideology, Well, and if they unify illegally, there's no need for the U.S. to be there. And if the U.S. is pulled out, then of course China now owns the Korean Peninsula, and now you have that complete red wave, the red scare that can sweep over all of East Asia. So on the surface, I don't know, in the Western media, everybody's saying, "Oh, Trump should get a Nobel Peace Prize," all this kind of stuff. But the reality of it is that they don't understand this is already a super leftist government in the South that is allying with the North, basically to become one leftist country. It is extremely ridiculous, in my view.
Well, no, it's good to hear because once again, I mean, you're way more familiar with what's going on in the peninsula than people like myself, and that's one of the reasons I asked. I mean, because so you're skeptical, and you're hoping that Trump reads through the maybe the facades and the rhetoric and be able to. Are you optimistic about where we're going with this, or I know you're wary for sure from what you just said, but are you optimistic or more pessimistic on this meeting?
I think most South Koreans who are conservative are very pessimistic about the meetings that are coming up. And of course, the quote reunification language is being pushed because it's reunification based on leftist ideology. And they don't want to lose their freedom. You know what I mean? If North Korea gets reunified with South Korea, and we have the most leftist South Korean president and administration ever in the history, they're literal, I mean, people understand, they're literal communists. And then we have, in South Korea, you have the young people who are like 50, 60% leftists. I mean, they're completely brainwashed by the indoctrination, public school system and university system, just like in the West. So they're all leftists there. They've all been taught to hate America. They've all been taught to hate, sovereignty and freedom. They've all been taught that totalitarianism and authoritarianism is the way. They've all been taught that centralized government is God and they should be trusted. They've all been brainwashed into this cult of statism. And it's like the Western media doesn't know any of this reality that's happening on the ground in South Korea. And they're just saying, even the alternative media in the West, InfoWars and these guys, their breakdown of Korea sometimes it drives me nuts because it's like they're just going on and on about, oh yes, they're unifying Korea. Hello, it's being unified into a communist country.
There's a delay.
There must be a delay here.
There's a breaking up.
A little bit of breaking up, unstable connection there. Looks like we lost Lou at this point, but hey Lou, you're still there?
There's a huge delay.
Okay, look like we lost him right now. But folks, it's crazy. It's crazy. That was Lou Jazikoff, founder and president of Independent Gazette and Independent Media. A very, very important thinker. Hey, Lou, let people know real quick before we end our broadcast today how they can support you, how they can pick up the Independent Gazette and now your Buffalo Head Media.
Yeah, LouJasikoff.com. They could go to LouJasikoff.com, LOUJASIKOFF site that I'm going to use. And, it all ties into one. I'm using that as a platform to talk about some of the things that we have talked about today. And, good luck with your the AME thing and all the stuff that you're doing. And we'll see you guys soon somewhere out there for sure.
All right, Lou. Well, it was great to see you, man. Stay safe, stay strong.
Thank you.
And God bless you, brother.
Yep.
Always good to see you. Folks, it's always good to see you. Thank you for joining us today on this edition of the King's Report. We will see you tomorrow, Saturday, 5 a.m. sharp. God bless, Godspeed, and may his kingdom come. See you tomorrow.